Awesome. So before 83, we're doing the Skyhook wireless case discussion. So first question, what grade would you give Morgan for how he pursued Skyhook and why? Herb, do you want to start us off on that?
Yeah, initially I gave him A plus because I was really impressed with both of them, willing to make sacrifices and putting their personal finances on the line. But then I changed it to A minus. While they were willing to make those sacrifices, I think they never really quite define what their value proposition is and how they could get to the right people. You know, they talked to these fellow geeks, but didn't focus enough on cutting through the crud and immediately making a connection with the decision makers.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I'd give them an A just because, they put it together, just make it happen, even though it was kind of an impossible task. They're really creative.
Yep.
In a lot of ways, just very creative with how to do things, how to keep costs down, especially. I feel like we're going to be talking about that. They did good overall. Second question, Skyhook developed a pretty cool technology that has gotten a lot of positive feedback. Put yourselves in the shoes of Ted Morgan. Why the lack of sales? So I can start on this one. I think it's there, just like you were saying, Herb, they have a really hard time explaining to people what their value proposition is. Sometimes the companies, I know, some of the companies just didn't see how this was a revolutionary technology. They were more in it for like a software than for the big application of being able to how it just in many ways outstrip GPS and just overcome a lot of the problems that GPS has. So that's kind of that's what I think they have a lack of sales. What do you think?
Yeah, I put down too many chefs that love the recipe, but nobody wants to pay for the ingredients. They found all these people that absolutely love the idea, but they could never quite track down, okay, who's actually going to pay for this? How is that going to affect their budget? And that rings similar to what I deal with a lot of times at work. Coca-Cola, of course, we want to win in the market, but sometimes it's hard, because I work for the bottler. So if we don't have the right price level, then we don't make any money. So who's going to pay for the difference? Or who, if we are at a comfortable price level, who's going to pay for the over-the-top execution? With umbrellas and tumblers and whatnot. The money has to come from somewhere. So it's always a struggle to kind of find the right parties to. So anyway, so it rang very true when they were talking to Nokia. When they were talking to the software department, and the hardware department is going to be something that creates value before the product is assembled, or is it going to create value after the product is assembled through ad revenue? Where's the value created and who's going to pay for it? And I think that was just all. I mean, everybody loved it, just like you said. They had a great product, great technology, but they just had a hard time. Okay, who's going to pay for this? Because it was just completely revolutionary new technology.
Yeah, that's great points. I mean, that's totally true. So you already talked about Nokia. We'll talk a little about that a little more. So Microsoft. So their proposal. Okay. So you want to do Microsoft then?
Yeah. So with Microsoft, they proposed an upfront payment and then ongoing licensing fees. I think with that being their initial major deal, they were a little too greedy. Microsoft was excited about the opportunity, but then I guarantee you what happened is they were excited. They signed the initial agreement off, and then when they actually had the fish on the hook, they went to the budget department, the accounting department, whatever, and they said, "How much do you want to pay? Do you realize how much that's going to cost us in the long run? You know, you need to go back." And I promise you that that's what happened. So again, Skyhook, and Ted Morgan, they were just a little too greedy. They should have come in more with a focus on a long-term strategy. You know, how can we come in here with Microsoft and then leverage that interest and that exposure for Skyhook with other manufacturers?
Right. I totally agree with that. And I mean, they should have been able to. With that one, I still don't think that they were fully able to express the value of what they're offering and kind of the revolutionary technology. Because I feel like Microsoft, if they really knew the value of it, they wouldn't have balked at the price, you know. But I totally agree that they definitely went back to the budget and were like, I don't know where this is going to come out of. But E911. So if I understand it right, the proposal is basically that they'd be able to get the 911 service would be able to use the location technology so that they could know where all of their emergency vehicles were at any time. So like in New York, they would know in the event of a major crisis how to get everyone to the scene of the crisis quickly. It really just, I think that one was just killed with bureaucracy, you know. I just think that the government kind of, you know, they didn't know whose budget it was going to come out of, and it really just kind of fell through, even though it was a good idea. And honestly, I think that it would have been a good outcome for them if it would have worked out. But at some point, there was going to have to be an end to that revenue stream, you know. So I think it would have been a little boost, but I don't think it would be a consistent revenue stream like they need.
Yeah, actually, the E911 would have been on the consumer end. So if somebody uses a VoIP, a voice over internet a phone, whether it's a wireless phone or a home phone, you would use the Wi-Fi locating system to confirm the physical address from where the call has originated. So again, like you said, it would have been nice exposure for them, but since there was no laws on the books, no FCC regulation regarding that, it just fizzled out. So I don't think it would have been a major moneymaker. Again, it would have just been something where Skyhook is the underlying technology. So it would have been a nice notch in their belt, but I don't think it was that important.
Yeah, I agree. So do you want to take initially Nokia? I know you talked about it a little bit.
So yeah, Nokia. So they it sounded like they didn't want any upfront funding, upfront payments, but they were, hoping for a licensing fee that varied greatly. I want to say it was like between 30 cents and $1 per unit, and they were even willing to amend that if they could get some long-term revenue through ads, localized ads, or whatever services they could developed with Nokia. Again, I think the problem was that there were just too many departments. Nokia is a huge company. And just like my employer, there's so many department heads with similar yet different interests, different cost structures. Some are willing to pay up front, some want to pay, it's almost like phone service, cell phone service. Some want to pay up front, some want to pay post plan, yada, yada, yada. And again, the problem was that you just never dealt with the final decision maker, somebody that was truly, who had the wallet and could make the decision.
Yeah, I agree with that. It was, it's hard to determine what budget it'll come out of, and sometimes it can be really political with budgets and with who has to pay for things. So I also think that Nokia was too. I think they made a mistake of just looking too much at the sunk cost. They spent billions of dollars to acquire this GPS company and technology, and I think they kind of looked at the sunk cost of that, and they're like, I'm not sure if I want to invest anymore into location technology because we are invested this much. So they kind of missed out on that opportunity because, budgeting and because of sunk costs. So,
yep.
I think we made a mistake there. So who benefits from the technology? What problem does it solve? Who has this problem? This decision makers in the company feel the pain that this solution solves. So, I feel in the end, it's mostly for companies, this technology. On the consumer side, yeah, it's useful. There's definitely some, but I feel like that use is limited. I feel like companies in the end have the biggest reward to get out of this, the biggest benefit. They can use it for multiple purposes. From the best one I can think of is advertising, or just using it just as a value, an added value to their product, and then, so what do you feel? What benefits from the technology?
Well, I think that it's the same thing when other revolutionary technological advances came about, whether it's Google, SMS text, or Twitter, or Facebook. Initially people didn't even really know because nothing had existed before, and now you have this brand new technology and people are baffled. They don't even know how it could possibly benefit them until there are some user cases where they now go, that's what I can use this for. I mean, I remember that's what I was thinking about Twitter when they came about I want to say it was in the late 2000s. I was like, what in the world? Why, 144 characters? How is that ever? And I still don't really use it, but it certainly has taken over the world. So now I think that the same thing is happening here with Skyhook, and I think a lot of the paper pushers at these big companies, they just don't grasp the concept of what it can accomplish, and the geeks that understand the technological aspect of things, they're just not given any kind of decision power when it comes to budgets. I mean, the problems that this Skyhook location service solves. I mean, airports, parking structures, big concert halls, museums, big shopping malls. I mean, anything where there's a large indoor structure, or where there's a lot of high rises, so the GPS signals are blocked. I mean, in any of those scenarios, in addition to allowing non-GPS enabled devices know where they are, which of course were a whole lot more in mid 2000s than in the 2010s. I mean, now everything has a GPS built in. But back then, the GPS chips were a lot more expensive than what they are now.
Yeah, I agree. It's amazing how much technology price goes down over the time it's created to
Right.
10 years down the line. I totally agree with that. I think it basically solves the problem of, GPS technology not being very good in urban areas. And most people, I mean, the majority of the population lives in urban areas, in cities. I think it's like 80 to 90% of the population. So it really helps those people. It helps businesses know where they are, just like we talked about. And I don't think the business decision makers really do feel that pain. I feel like they have GPS and they think that GPS is great, so they don't really see the problem that it really solves. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they could have done a much better job at painting that picture, and say, hey, have you ever been you know, now that this thought goes through my mind, though, I'm not sure how much of these CEOs would have actually seen the need to have a location service inside of an airport or inside of a hotel. Because they have people working for them, directing, them where they need to go. But be that as it may, Morgan and Mike, they should have done a better job at just painting that picture and saying how it complements GPS technology at that time and just makes and opens up completely new location dependent services, such as the local ads. Nowadays Uber and Lyft, those shared, whatever you want to call them, driving services and whatnot, or bicycle rental services that where you hook a cheap Wi-Fi device on a bicycle, and you can look up, hey, where's the closest rental bicycle to me? All those things. So, anyways, I just think they didn't draw a big enough picture of what this technology can be used for.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Just like I think perhaps maybe the computer, initially people didn't really realize how what uses it could have. There's that famous
computers, exactly on that note, Austin. Computers didn't really sell until there was software to make it beneficial, right? I mean, initially these initial PCs that tinkerers could assemble at home. I mean, you could make a couple of lights blink or whatever, or turn into a big calculator, but it didn't really turn into a product until Apple and IBM sold their devices with software installed, text editing and photo editing and media. That's when it really started taking off.
It's a good point. When I was born, it was already there. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, computers were a little bit before my time too, but I remember growing up at school. I mean, all we did is we programmed in BASIC, and so you could make a dot move left and right. You could build a very simple racetrack game, but that was it. I mean, we didn't have any text editors or anything to that effect. So yeah, they almost needed to develop a product that sits on top of Skyhook and shows the benefits of the underlying technology.
I agree with that. They almost need something that they can use to sell it. You know, I agree with that. So now we have to pick a strategy. So I personally, odds. What do you go for?
I think they need to sell the company. It's been 4 years now, and they've had contact with these. You know, at that time Nokia was huge. So was Microsoft. Much more so than what either is today. Nokia is not even a company anymore. It's a brand. Um, you know, doesn't really have much foothold in people's conscience. But back then, you know, there was still a lot of dumb phones. So again, they had contact with these multinational conglomerates that you know are probably, you know, 60-70% of the world population know what these companies are, and they were still not able to close the deal. And so it's 4 years later. They've gone through a couple of uh, uh, um, what is it called again? Funding a series. Um, I think it's time for them to sell it to a big company such as Qualcomm, who, you know, makes, at that time was still a struggling company, but, you know, already made all kinds of chips that were being used in mobile devices. I don't think that Intel at that time had anything going on in the mobile market, but I could be wrong. I think either a phone manufacturer or a chip manufacturer is who they should seek out to sell this technology to, and call it a day.
Yeah, that was definitely my second choice. So do you want to start with the current team skills, resources, business model of selling the company?
Well, current team skills. Um, Again, you know, the great mindset of not spending money that you don't have. Even actually the opposite. You know, they were saving money ahead of running out of money, instead of, you know, running out of money and then you start making cuts. So they were very wise in that respect. I think you mentioned it, that they were very innovative. You know, when they used that database, that was what's it called?
Open.
User generated, but there's a word to it. Not common core, whatever it is. It was public domain basically, and they used that database and made themselves look like they had mapped, you know, large parts of the U.S. So they're very skilled. They just were not skilled enough in closing the deal, you know, drawing the picture for potential customers. Resources. I think they're down. I'm not sure at the time when the case study begins. I don't think it says anymore how many months they have left. I think it was prior to the Series C when they were down to 9 months. Yeah, that's when it was. They were down to 9 months. So I think in regards to cash, they were good. In regards to people, I think they were at 17 employees. But it didn't really say what everybody was doing. Technology, again, very innovative, and something that could sit atop of any device that has Wi-Fi access. The business model, I think that's where they're lacking, showing a solid value proposition, and again, because it's a new and emerging technology, they were probably limited by their own imagination, and then certainly these companies that they were pitching the product to. were also limited in their imagination what it could be used for.
Yeah, I agree. They definitely have to work on their business model for sure. So for local ads, I guess the current team skills, they're not the best at selling, but I feel maybe if they worked at a local level, they might be able to sell.
So is that the option that you favor?
Yeah.
Okay.
And let's see. So they might need some more marketing or selling representatives, but I feel like they'd be able to get a pretty good revenue stream from it. You know, if businesses can know where people are at when they're searching for them, they can give them local restaurants. They can give them local data. So if I search for say at Chase Bank, it knows where I am, so it directs me to the nearest Chase Bank instead of like me having to search for a branch online or something. So I feel like local advertisements are a big market that they could get into, and it's a growing market. And so I feel like since they're pretty strapped for, they need some revenue. They need something to keep them going. You know, they keep on getting loan after loan, like investment after investment, but they need something to keep them going here. So, and I feel like it would definitely change their business model. But I feel like it might be a good change for them because so far they haven't been very successful with the business model that they have. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, see, that's where the prep assignment, that's where it was a little torn, because it mentioned that Google was working with Apple still at that time to use their mapping software, and that Google had not made it public knowledge yet that they were developing their own smartphones. So my concern with the local ads was, one, they would have to either join a partnership with somebody that has that local advertising nailed down, and so Skyhook again would just be the underlying technology, or they would have to develop it from the ground up, and I think that would be tremendously difficult. Setting up a sales network to sell these local ads. Because initially I had the same approach, but then as I was reading through, it sounded like this was a little bit more pre-Google really dominating the smartphone space. And I was actually surprised that Google was not mentioned as an interested party.
I agree with that. I thought they would have been, since they're kind of the, some of the top innovators as far as the company goes, But
yeah, and Apple is much more about selling devices, and Google is much more about the long-term value of selling advertising and collecting data. And I think that's where Skyhook, because I was even thinking how they could make this technology better is if, along with using the Skyhook technology to let users know or the device know where it is, they could also collect data from the device about new Wi-Fi signals. So the device could both report where the device is, but also collect new incoming data for Skyhook. And so it would, almost like last week's, what was it called? Cloudflare.
yeah.
So the more attacks you have, the better your product gets. So the same thing here. The more your device reports where it is, the more it also feeds accurate location information back to Skyhook, and just so constantly gives you better and better data.
That's a good point. I hadn't really thought about that. That's a good point. Um, Number 9. So the agenda for jobs. Um, so I guess I'll start on the BATNA. Um, so I think anything below, because basically what they want is, well, there's two options here. I honestly just think if they don't say that they will at least install this in their phones, I think that they should just walk away from it.
Yeah, if Skyhook has to pay for it, they need to walk away.
Yeah, I agree with that one as well.
But even if they can just partner with Apple to make it available, kind of as a what do you call it? Darn it. As a trial, as a proof of concept.
Right.
Install it into all these iPhones, all these iPads, and what was the iPods, right? Install it on all the Apple devices as a proof of concept, and then really, and then people understand what it's used for, how it improves a device's capabilities, and then go to market with all these other companies.
Right. So you want to take Jobs' interests?
So I I don't like Apple. Okay, so I want to say that first. I put down that all Jobs wants is really to keep the hardware costs as low as possible, but still provide a superior look and feel, and just charge a premium. So I think to that effect, with Skyhook, he could avoid having to, at that time, spend a considerable amount on a GPS chip, but still provide a similar experience for users.
Yeah, that's a good point. I read Steve Jobs' biography like 3 times, so he's an interesting guy. He's like very obsessive over his products, like very, even to the point of where it wouldn't be a good business decision because of how obsessive he was over it. I think he's obsessed with, especially initially for like the iPhone, just creating the best possible product. So I feel like, as well as, I think you're right, as well as getting the cost down on that, I think he was also trying to provide something that others didn't have, which is they didn't have anything like Skyhook. They didn't have the Wi-Fi location service. So I feel like those were some of Jobs' interests on top of what you were talking about as well.
Good point.
So why did Steve Jobs call? I think we pretty much talked about that. Keep, superior product, keep costs low, have something unique in the market, right?
Yeah, so part of the reading, I Googled Skyhook and tried to find out where they stand now. And really it doesn't look like they really went anywhere. But one of the interesting things in the Wikipedia article for it actually mentions how Jobs gave a shout out to Skyhook at Macworld, but then that actual article was behind a paywall, so I'm not really sure what it said. But then there's also, I didn't get to finish it, there's another article at USA Today, again talking about Jobs, just being excited about Skyhook. And it even sounds like they did come to some kind of agreement.
Huh. Yes.
I think, just like you said, I think the reason he called is it was, at that time, Skyhook's premise was unique. It was something that would make dumb, quote unquote, devices smarter, with no change in hardware. And he probably just wanted. I mean, the other thing I found interesting is that Steve Jobs called Ted Morgan directly. He didn't leave a. You didn't call the receptionist or anything. He called Ted's extension directly and left him a voicemail. So I'm sure he kind of played the cloud of, hey, I'm the one calling you, not one of my underlings, just again to show how serious he is.
That's a good point. I hadn't really thought about that. That's a good point. He was, and I bet I can almost see double side to that as well, because Steve Jobs is kind of at that time, especially kind of a well-known name, you know, kind of had a reputation. So I think definitely he's playing that card as well. And I think we both agree on this next one for who should pay. Definitely think Apple should pay. I don't think Skyhook can afford to pay Apple for it. I think Apple needs to be paying Skyhook.
Yeah, and I think I mean that's how they should go in there. They should go in there with a proposal of Apple paying for the Skyhook services, but be very reasonable about that and be flexible, similar to how they approach Nokia, saying, "Hey, we could do this with an ad-supported, you know, product or whatever." And I think my minimum would be, hey, at minimum, let's install it. I'm not sure where the iPhone model was at that time, but let's say, hey, let's install it in the next limited run of iPods, and you know, so we both have more information about how profitable this can be for both of us, and then go from there. But I think if Apple is not willing to do that, and if Apple insists on Skyhook paying, I would walk away. That's a losing proposal.
I don't think they could afford. They need some revenue. They need something coming in. So you want to continue on with how big the opportunity is for Skyhook?
I mean, this to me, this is their last shot. You know, if they can't close a deal with Apple, they're a goner. You know, because then really the only other option is to sell. You know, if they can close a deal with Apple, they have the major brand at that time behind them, and they can say, look, we are on every Apple device, or we are on the new iPod 2007, and look what it does for Apple, and look what it does for the app developers. And so here, AOL or Google or you know, any of these other companies, here's what it can do for you, but this is what you're going to have to pay. So they need to give up any kind of revenue from Apple. I think that's worth it, but they definitely cannot afford to pay for that opportunity.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think this is their last. It's their last shot. You know, they have to make something work, but if they they have to get some sort of revenue from it.
Yep.
Something. So do you have any last summary or last points or anything?
No, just I'm gonna look a couple more minutes to kind of find out. So it looks like Skyhook now is still a privately held company. Never made the jump to being a publicly traded company. I couldn't find anything so far in regards to how they create revenue and if they've made any major deals with anybody. So it's a little disappointing. And actually, in the Wikipedia, it doesn't even show. So it shows Ted and Mike as the founders, But then under where it says key people, it doesn't even show their names anymore. So somebody else is the CEO now, somebody else is the chief tech officer, somebody else is the chief financial officer. So Ted and Mike are completely out of the equation.
Yeah, that's sometimes what you got to do. If they're not making it work, you got to provide new management for it. That's it's kind of disappointing, especially that I think Morgan or whatever his name was. Poor guy, man. All his family is super successful. All his brothers and sisters, and
Yeah.
he's just trying his best, But so that's good. Well, I'll go ahead and stop this broadcast.